Hi, so I'm delighted to welcome our next presenter today, who's Vinita Jacob, Associate Director, Site Reliability Engineering at Verizon, India. And Vinita is speaking on evangelizing the site reliability engineering mindset. So Vinita, I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so let me quickly share my screen. Yeah, just let me know when it's visible. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, let me go to
That looks good.
show mode. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. As Alex mentioned, so I'm Vinita Jacob, Associate Director at Verizon India, and I champion SRE practices for the Verizon Consumer Group. And first of all, I would like to welcome all of you for this session. And I would be talking about how we can evangelize SRE, a mindset with the idea of building a culture of reliability and ownership. So as more and more organizations are embracing hybrid cloud strategies and IT automation at scale, so SRE or site reliability engineering continues to gain popularity. And in recent years, SRE has become an essential discipline in organizations that uses DevOps and agile methods. So though the SRE adoption is growing, a lot remains to be done. So my talk track today will focus on some of these SRE best practices, processes, and how the organizations can build a strong SRE culture. So, so this is the agenda for today. So let's look at, there is a famous quote by Jeff Bezos, which says, we see our customers as invited guests to a party and we are the host. So it's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little bit better. So every customer experience matters, right? So what are our customers, clients, and the stakeholders complaining about? So issues like the web pages taking a much longer time to load. Sometimes, the customers find the issues much before the operations team notices it. Or, several times the developer community or the stakeholders ask us as if why the self-healing did not kick in as expected, and then cloud overspending and not staying within the cloud budget. I think that is also a teething problem for us. And not having the proper monitoring, not being able to catch some of the corner scenarios. And, why does it take much longer to resolve the outages, and don't we have standard documentation? And, the most important is how can we, measure the availability and the reliability, right? So these are some of the questions. So what exactly is site reliability engineering? So SRE is a software engineering approach to IT operations, and SRE teams uses software as a tool to manage systems, to solve problems, and automate operations tasks. And the concept of site reliability engineering also comes from the Google engineering team. So let's look at some of the basics of SRE, right? So reliability, availability, maintainability, and scalability. So these are the key system design attributes that are used to measure systems. And out of these, availability and reliability are basically related to the system performance. Now, there is a small difference between availability and reliability. So reliability is the measure of how long a machine performs its intended function, whereas availability is the measure of the percentage of time the machine is up and running. So for example, a machine may be up and running 90% of the time, but reliable only 75% of the time from a performance standpoint. Now, there are 4 golden signals of monitoring, like latency, errors, traffic, saturation. So I'm not going in depth into each of these, but these are the 4 critical signals that are basically used to measure the reliability of any system. And if you look below, so I have also listed some of the other metrics, like SLA. We all know what the SLA is, the service level agreement. This is the agreement with the users. So SLA is can be 99%. That is how most of the organizations define it. Then you also have the SLO. SLO is the service level objective. So this is the objective the internal team must hit to achieve the SLA. And SLOs are usually higher than the SLA. And SLI is the actual performance number, or in other words, it's the percentage of the good calls by the total calls. And if you look at it, error budget, right? So error budget is how much of downtime a system can afford without upsetting customers, or in other words, it's the margin of error that is permitted by a service level objective. So just like how you manage your home budget, error budgets are also allocated either monthly or on a quarterly basis, and only that much of downtime is allowed. So for example, if your SLA is 99.99%, the yearly allowed downtime is only 52 minutes and 35 seconds. And that translates to roughly about 4 minutes and 23 seconds per month. So it is, every, not just the SRE objective, but this is also the development team. It is everybody's responsibility to stay within that error budget, right? So now let's look at some of the other basic SRE tenets that we have, or SRE currencies that we call it, or SRE principles, right? So first one is the SRE observability. So observability is a key SRE tenet. And what do you mean by observability, right? So observability is basically instrumenting your system with tools to collect actionable data to know when the error occurs, but more importantly, why they happen. And you would ask, why do we need observability, right? So most of the organizations have a very strong and robust monitoring systems. There are several monitoring tools, you have tools to monitor infrastructure, to monitor database, to monitor application performance, the network, the security layer, and then Citrix. And also you have the synthetic monitoring tools. But are all these tools really serving you the purpose? Are you able to pinpoint an issue within a few minutes, or might be even 10 minutes of time? So most of the applications are so complex that the operations team find that their traditional monitoring tool set, right, it is unable to consume the vast number of events, and they are overwhelmed with alerts. And we also call it as alert fatigue, and they are unable to identify the root cause of the potential issues and the service interruption. So that is why having a very strong observability framework is all the more important. So unfortunately, many organizations don't have adequate the observability in place. So it's not just enough to be able to build and deploy systems. You should also be able to monitor them and diagnose issues when they arise. So traditional monitoring tool only provides a limited view, and sometimes it takes hours to recover from an incident. That is where we say that monitoring is not just about ensuring that you have a steady flow of alerts, right? I mean, are the customers able? Are you able to serve the customers, right? So that is the main point here. So in order to leverage observability, you will need to put in place the proper tooling and services to collect the necessary telemetry, right? So this telemetry can come from the servers, it can come from load balancers, databases, from the storage network and whatnot, right? And this will help to correlate the data between multiple sources, create context, create visualization. It will help in your automation. And most of the organizations face with these challenges. So how to reduce the alert fatigue, how to improve the efficiency of the L1 operations team, how to bring in proactive practices like self-healing, or build the end-to-end dashboards that will give you a full view of the application ecosystem, right? And by gathering telemetry in a consistent and automated way, you will also be able to bring in the machine learning operations and the AI ops practices. And that definitely is the higher gear for us. So our target should be to transform from reactive to proactive to predictive. So let's look at another critical tenet that we have, that is blameless postmortem, right? So when an incident occurs, we fix the underlying issue and the services return to their normal state. So unless we have a formalized process of learning from these incidents in place, they will reoccur again. So therefore, postmortems are an essential tool for SRE. And when things go wrong, looking for someone to blame is only a natural human tendency. In the next slide, I have also depicted how a good postmortem versus a bad postmortem is, right? So a blameless culture encourages a company to take a look at incidents or any challenge and shift blame from people to system. And a systems view will provide teams with a view to be open and honest about the issues that arise. So a blameless postmortem actually begins with a cultural mindset, which means not throwing any blame on any individual or team. So there should be no finger pointing, on any team or individual for causing the incident. So how can you cultivate a culture of blamelessness in your organization? So choice of language is very, very important. So use the right words while discussing the incident. So ask the what, how, and why questions, and totally avoid the who questions, and focus on the contributing actions. So it is easier said than done, right? So in the end, what really matters is how we respond to these failures. So, let's look at the other critical tenet that we have, that is chaos engineering. Now, chaos engineering is another important practice that is made famous by Netflix. And chaos engineering is the act of injecting failure into production. So the traditional testing approach or the disaster test alone will not help to validate and predict the behavior of these systems. So chaos engineering can help to bring in that required confidence and certify that the systems are resilient and fault tolerant, right? The focus here is also to introduce the various disaster scenarios into the infrastructure in a thoughtful fashion, and to test and record the system's ability to respond under these induced conditions. So these are basically surprise tests, or we can also call it as a surgical strike on the system. So we measure how the systems respond, right? Did the failover happen as expected? If the workload is in cloud, right? Did the instances scale up as required? And also we observe from a process perspective, right? So did we get the right alerts? Were the playbooks working as expected? Did the self-healing click in? And were the L1 team, intimated, like when this issue occurred? And also from a people perspective, right? So did the L1 team respond immediately to the alert, and what was the action they took? And it's also very important to have a very good rollback, process documented. So our whole aim here is to simulate the real world events as much as possible, right? So it is also a way of instilling confidence in the system, instilling confidence in our stakeholders, clients, that these are the tests, these are the experiments that we should be carrying out, at least for our mission critical applications, just to test how prepared we are. So now let's look at the toil reduction, right? So what is toil? So toil can be defined as the enemy of SRE. And what is toil, right? So what are the tasks that can be categorized as toil? So toil is any task that tends to be manual, automatable, or that scales linearly as the service grows, which is tactical, repetitive, and might not be in few cases not even having an enduring value. But just being classified as toil doesn't mean that the task is not important or it is unnecessary, right? So on the contrary, most of the organizations would grind to a halt if the toil didn't get done. So there are, if I can explain, I give few examples of toil. So the patching that we do, the upgrades, the semi-manual deployments, the schema updates, the network changes, DNS changes, right? So security, the certificate renewals, the security vulnerability fixes, all of this. Toil, it can also be generated by any action that we take to recover from incidents. Suppose you have to do a JVM recycle, or you have to do some restarts, right? Any particular time of the day, you do the restarts. Before the start of business hours, that's what we do, a restart. So all of these are also classified as toil. SRE believes that operations is an engineering problem, right? So if teams spend majority of their time on toil, they have very less time for high value work. And as a consequence, the operational cost rise and the focus is more reactive than being proactive. So this also prohibits innovation. So SRE teams' time should be focused on engineering and innovation. And an engineering problem should strive for automation. So the operational work does not have to be manual and mundane task, right? So Also, if you ask me, for a mature SRE organization, automation should be a part of the DNA. So we need to try to bring in more self-service options, self-healing or auto-healing, right? So that is another good option, where the system will automatically detect the issue and it will also automatically mitigate the issue as well. And now if you look at it, we are in a world where the cars run in autopilot mode, right? So there is no reason to not do automation and to not address the operational problems through the engineering solutions. And if you ask me, doing manual work is bad. Doing the same manual work repetitively is a crime, and not, thinking about how this can be automated is actually a lost opportunity, right? So now we've looked at some of the critical SRE practices. Okay, so there are a lot more other SRE practices, like having a good incident management. That is very important, right? So having very efficient CI/CD pipelines, that is also very critical. Having a good release management process, having good capacity planning. So all of these standardization initiatives, okay, all of these are the basic principles, or you can tell the basic currencies of SRE. And our goal should be to move from availability monitoring to reliability monitoring, right? By using all of these SRE tenets. So now let us look at the culture element, right? And I've just listed some of the cultural tenets of SRE. So first and foremost, accepting failure as normal. So accepting failure as normal means understanding that having 100% of uptime is impossible. So no matter how much of effort you put into improving the reliability of your systems, right? So there is always a possibility of an unforeseen issue. So celebrate failure as an opportunity to learn. So I think that is the most important aspect. Then adopting a blameless culture. So we already, discussed about it, but when failure occurs, address it blamelessly. So rather than finding fault with individuals, so work together and identify the systemic causes together. So building a strong team and shared ownership is very, very important. So SRE culture emerges from within the team. It cannot be enforced top down without support. So involve people at every level to help form this culture mindfully. It is very important to break down silos of information, have a bridge between the development and the operations team. Involve SRE team right from the architecture and the design phase of any project, right? So usually we see that SREs are after the fact, right? So after the application is designed, when the application is about to be deployed in non-prod, that is when the SRE team comes into picture. But we have to come out of that model. SREs, or we can also look to have the embedded SRE. SRE team should be a part of all the development discussions, of all the architecture design discussions, and they have to be involved right from the beginning. A new project or a new application or a new service is being designed. Putting resiliency first. So reliability is feature number one. So it doesn't matter how feature rich or innovative your service is, if your users cannot access it. And when designing the specifications for a service, include your reliability goals. So use your SLOs and ensure that that is at the topmost, that is the most critical point when you discuss. And promote continuous improvement, right? So continuously review and revise the policies, practices, and resources so that you can promote a culture of continuous improvement. So we spoke a little bit about building that reliability mindset, right? So how exactly can you build it? So first and foremost is be prepared. So as we mentioned, failures are inevitable. So even an all-star SRE team knows that incidents are inevitable. So put in place processes and systems that will make it easy to detect, mitigate, and prevent problems, right? Next one is embrace automation, identify toil and eliminate manual touch points. So build in more and more automation such that the operations task run in an almost autopilot mode. Let data do the talking, right? So be deliberate about the metrics that you track and put them at the front and center of your decision making and prioritization, and use this data to identify the customer needs, communicate with your stakeholders, and so on. Then debrief without blame. Cultivate an environment that is devoid of blame, but filled with trust, transparency, growth, and accountability. close the feedback loop. So develop a process of evaluating feedback and measuring, ensuring that the team has a clear understanding of the decisions that have been taken. And last,
10 minutes left.
okay, sure. And last but not least, the most important point is be customer centric, right? So customer centricity means putting the customer first and center of everything that you do. So as I conclude, these are some of the key takeaways, and we've already discussed this, but I'll just close it fast, right? So redefine operations. I think when you build your SRE team, build it with the right skill set, build it with the right mix of people. Just renaming your DevOps or your production support team to SRE will not help, right? So you need to build the team with the right skill set. You need to have the proactive monitoring, alerting, self-healing initiatives, good observability framework, simplify the tools and processes. Standardization is a very, very, very critical tenet, right? And that is actually the base of any of the automations that you do. So standardize, have standardization and track the reliability metrics very, very closely. Eliminate toil, automate all the operations work that you do, right? And embrace SLIs, SLOs. Okay, so that should be your main talking points. And last but not least, the most important piece of this is culture, right? So build a strong SRE culture. With that, I would I'd like to thank each one of you for joining this session and listening to me patiently. And again, thanks to the event organizers, Unicom and Alec and everybody for having me here. Thank you. And with that, I open up for the Q&A.
Thank you. Thanks, Vinita. Excellent presentation. I can see a question that's coming already. This is from Raj. What are the primary metrics and indicators used to measure the effectiveness of SRE efforts?
Yeah, so if you ask me, it is definitely, so when you build the scorecard for SRE, okay, definitely you have to look at MTTR, the mean time to resolve, and might be the zero outage days. Mean time between failures. Okay, so MTTR, then toil reduction. Okay, definitely. I mean, I know it is very tough to measure toil reduction per se, but you can look at, okay, how much work was being done manually before, how much is being eliminated by the automation that you have put in. Cloud cost. Okay, definitely cloud cost also should be part of your scorecard. That also should be part of your metrics, right? So are you staying? I think you need to have a very good governance on the cloud cost as well. And definitely reduction in the outages. I think that is also a very critical point. So all this MTTR, zero outage days, reduction in outages, how many outages you avoided, right? Or from your framework, and how fast you responded to incidents. I think all of this, and definitely, you also need to have a very good CI/CD pipeline, right? So that is where the releases, how fast you're able to deliver code to production. I think all of that will be part of the SRE, metrics.
Thanks. Couple more questions come in. I'll take them in the order they came. The next one is, what are the common challenges and roadblocks encountered during the implementation of SRE, and how can they be overcome? Yeah, so if you ask me from a challenges and a roadblock perspective, right, I think first of all, making the organization realize that SRE is a critical, a way forward. Okay, I mean, most of the organizations have production support in mind, but yeah, so automation, what is the gain that you get from automation? I think that is something that you have to explain to the organizations. Okay, also one other thing that we see is, okay, people try to emulate what Google has done. So Google is the pioneer in SRE, right? And we also often look upon the Google SRE model. Sometimes we try to adopt it as is, but we all should remember that there is no one size fits all solution, right? So Google's SRE model will not fit as is to all organizations. So there are several reasons for it, like the organization culture, your org priorities, your budget constraints, your strict release priorities, DevOps maturity. Sometimes even you might not be measuring the customer experience, right? So every organization has their own priorities, and you have to
define your SRE goals based on your priorities. And SRE should actually focus on understanding the ground reality of the organization, understand what are the key pain points, and then you have to build your SRE model on top of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Got time for another question, and this one is: what are the technical skills required if anyone wants to move to an SRE role?
So I would say it is the basic. Yeah, I would say it is the basic production support technical skills, definitely. Okay, but added to that, the person should also start thinking from a like a developer, right? Like a software engineer. I mean, start thinking from a code perspective. Should be very, and when I talk about the basic production support skill set, is definitely they should be aware of monitoring. They should be aware of the basic middleware skills. Cloud, that person definitely, because most of the workloads are in cloud, right? So let it be AWS or GCP or OCI. So whatever cloud platform your organization is supporting, definitely they have to be an expert in that. Now, more and more organizations are also getting into Kubernetes, managed services, AWS managed services, or some of those, right? So EKS. So these are some of the other skill set. Automation plays a very key role. I think the person should be, very strong in Python and some of those, the other automation skills as well. And I think, yeah, these are some of the skills that I can think about. But having definitely that production support mindset will help. And also think how you can build this as a product. I think, right? That is what if you run into any operational challenge, how can that be converted to an engineering use case? And how can a product be built out of it, right? How can you customize it? I think these are, that whole thought process is, not that of a sysadmin that, okay, this is my work, I do my work every day and I go home. That should not be the attitude. It is, how can you convert it to an engineering use case? How can you build an automation out of it? How can you build a product out of it? I think that is the overall mindset that is required.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Vinita.
Thank you.
I'll see our pop-up. Feedback box has just popped up again. So thank you. We're slightly ahead of schedule. We've got, I think, about 5 minutes until the next session starts. So if I can just ask one last question to, please, Vinita, out of curiosity, are there particular sort of products or vendors that you work with that you found particularly good, or maybe otherwise in this?
Yeah, so it is not exactly, but what I would suggest is there are, if you look at it, Google has got a very strong SRE practice. They are the pioneers of SRE. So for any organization that wants to move into SRE, I would definitely suggest that look at Google's SRE practices, look at Netflix SRE practices, right? You might even get into some discussions with them. Otherwise, there are a lot of other AIOps tools. There are a lot of other tools available. There are a lot of monitoring tools available, observability framework that is available outside in market, right? On the AIOps side, I think MookSoft, and there are a lot of, so that, MookSoft and some of those other vendors, they'll definitely help to build that strong observability framework. But otherwise, I think there are no vendors per se, right? It's all, what is your organization need? What is your drive? I mean, is it customer, focused? Is it more, customer serving application? Are you looking to serve your customers, or is it just deploying code to production faster? Look at what are your, priorities and how much of budget you have, right? That is also, you move all the workloads to cloud. It is not that easy. It is not that, less expensive as well. That is also a costly affair. Yeah, keep into mind all these things, but definitely look at some of the experts that are there out there, right? So Google and McKinsey, and I think McKinsey will help to might be validate what you're doing or what you're building. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really useful. Vinita, thanks again. Great session, and thanks for taking the questions at the end. It's been really good. We're spot on for time, so again, thank you. And we'll move on now to the next session, which is on enterprise DevSecOps. So we'll see you there in about a minute. Thank you. Thanks, Vinita.